to the Point of Impact podcast with Rick McDaniel. Thanks for joining us today. Get ready to be inspired and motivated to live a high-impact life. Now, here's Rick.
Welcome to the Point of Impact podcast. I'm Rick McDaniel. It's great to have you joining us again this week. We're going to continue to talk about lessons learned, life lessons, golden nuggets, things that you can benefit from. You know, why have to go through it or be challenged by it when you can gain the wisdom? And that's what I want to do here. And that's what I've been doing these last several weeks. And I want to continue to do that today as we just talk about gratitude. I just don't know anyone that's happy that doesn't practice gratitude. And I know lots of unhappy people and they don't have gratitude. And I've talked about this before, so you might think, what's new this time around, Rick? And one thing that's new is I'm going to talk a little bit about complaining, because complaining is really something that will keep you from having gratitude. And it's amazing how easy it is to fall into it. In fact, I would say gratitude is the antidote to complaining. It's so easy to complain. And I just spoke recently at a company on this idea of complaining, went into complaint-free living. I do this message, by the way, if you want me to come and share it at your company or your business or your event, whatever it might be. It's a great one, complaint-free living. It's just powerful. And gratitude is a part of that, how you deal with complaining. So we'll weave some of that in, but we've got lots else to talk about as well. Before we jump into that, let me just say that I've done something here that I really think is great, and I think you'll enjoy it. And that is a brief video, a little less than 2-minute video on the greater message. I'm very passionate about living a greater life. I believe too many people live a get by or a good enough life. And I can tell you right now, God wants you to live a greater life, greater things you can do. That's what Jesus said, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. It's one of the most remarkable scriptures in the Bible. So I've got this devotional and I've got this greater message, and you can hear the greater message and then you can have this devotional so that each day you can be inspired and encouraged to keep living the greater life. So I just love the whole thing. I'm just very excited to come and share that message. Again, companies, conferences, events, keynotes, churches, whatever. I want to be there. I want to spread this greater message and then have people be able to continue it 100 days by having the greater devotional as well. So we did this video down at the James River, which is the river that flows right through the middle of Richmond, Virginia. And we were down at the Hollywood Rapids. These are the only Class 4 rapids in any city in America. There are other rivers, West Virginia, Colorado. I've been to them on rafting, but you can't raft in a city except here. And so really, I mean, beautiful cinematography. I mean, I know it's just a short little video. Maybe I'm using big words there, but I think it's a beautifully shot video, and I think the message is powerful. And so go to my YouTube channel. You can watch it there. You can also find it on my social media. You might have to scroll back a little bit to find it. If you're listening, for instance, on the Pray app to this podcast, you can watch it right there. It's on the Pray app under Rick McDaniel in the video area. So however it is, and you know, for some of you, you've never met me or even seen me because you just listen. So you haven't seen me, maybe you haven't seen any videos of me speaking before. So you can see who this guy is that you listen to and what he looks like. And so I really love how this video came out, the message, the whole thing is good. Couple minutes of your time, and I think you'll enjoy it for sure. So take advantage of that. All right, so gratitude. You know what? Just this attitude of gratitude. It's so vitally important. And I just think that in life lessons, you know, this is a big one. My experience and all the research backs up how important gratitude is in your life. And if you're looking for some of the research that backs it up, So academics have spent time on, the expressions of thanks and gratitude, how it promotes health and happiness. This is not anything new. National Science Foundation has funded studies at Northeastern University, at University of California, Riverside. One of the interesting points of data in this research is you have to say thanks more than once a year. And the professor from Cal Riverside says if you don't do it regularly, you're not going to get the benefits. It's kind of like if you went to the gym once a year. What would be the good of that? So something to consider about gratitude. Gratitude leads people to act in more selfless ways. That comes from the Northeastern professor. And then another professor, University of California, Davis, his research says that gratitude makes people less envious and resentful, sleep better, exercise more, lower blood pressure. I mean, it helps you. In other words, it helps you physically, it helps you mentally, it helps you relationally. I mean, I don't know how much more you want than that. That's just powerful, powerful research that says gratitude is something you want to have in your life. An attitude of gratitude makes you constantly aware of the blessings in your life. And that's it. The fact that there's so many blessings. Now, when you're complaining, you're looking for all the things that aren't blessings and talking about them. When you're, in fact, having an attitude of gratitude, you're in the opposite place. You're practicing this. Too many spend too much time complaining and not nearly enough time being grateful. And it's true. I mean, it's just absolutely is a fact that complaining just can become so much a part of our lives that we don't even realize it. That's why I love doing this complaint-free challenge and going and speaking about that, because it's just like it opens people's eyes to how normalized complaining is. And it's just, we just can do it all the time. And the problem with that is that it's hard to have gratitude and complain simultaneously. You know that phrase, too blessed to be stressed. It's true. If you're focusing on your blessings, it's almost impossible to be stressed out. These two things just counteract one another. It's the same thing with gratitude and complaining. And the lack of gratitude, what happens is it means you're never truly happy. And then when things don't go well, you can become very angry and frustrated. So you can see just how negative this whole dynamic is, how it really works against you in a very, very powerfully negative way. You may wonder, why do we complain so much? And I've, given it a lot of thought. Here's just some things to consider today. We complain to get attention. We tell people how bad we have it, and then people listen to us. I mean, it's one of these things that it's been proven to us that if we complain, people will pay attention to us. So if we want attention, then we complain. I mean, it's just one of those things that's been rewarded. So over the years, we've learned to do that. Now, there's nothing wrong with sharing, your problems and concerns with your friends, your spouse. But again, it's this idea that it just complaint becomes our kind of like de facto preset. Here's a weird one. We complain to connect, people talk about the weather and I mean, it's kind of just weird how it becomes almost like a social thing. We complain about how rotten our sports team is, and it's really like a form of connection. And you say, well, what's so wrong about that, Rick? You're a big sports guy. I'm a big sports guy for sure. But there's other ways to connect. Like, for instance, just try something like this. Just try this. Say this podcast comes out on Friday. So let's just say you've listened to this today or over the weekend. Just go to work on Monday. And when someone starts into the complaint stuff, just say, hey, what's good in your life? What's good in your life? And get ready. I really hope you try it. It just, that right there could just be such an eye-opener for you about complaining. We complain to look better. In other words, we complain about someone else. This happens a lot at work. We complain about how so-and-so's project wasn't completed on time. I don't know what's wrong with them, but, it just sort of makes us look better. By the way, we also complain to excuse our own behavior. I would have picked that up like I told you I would, dear, before I came home. But then Jim just, all his foolishness at work and in the office, and, we just look for reasons to explain why we forgot to do something that we were supposed to do. And so we complain to excuse our mess up. And we can complain to avoid work, just altogether. We just say, someone asks us to do something, we're like, I'm just too busy. Boss has got me running ragged. And, in truth, we really just don't want to do it. But instead of saying that, we complain about the boss. This is what happens. This is it's ingrained. That's why to take what I call the complaint-free challenge and try to go a period of time without complaining. Here we are in this Lenten season. Say, I just don't know what to give up for Lent. How about giving up complaining? Try that. You won't believe how hard it is. It's if you really focus on it, you'll be like, wow, this is really, really way too big in my life. Yeah, way too big. And that's the problem. And that's what gratitude is all about. So, where are some things we can do? Where can we work at this, and how might we have some techniques? Well, here's one. This is a really powerful one. And I call it the last time technique. So think about if this was the last time you ever experienced whatever. That's really something. To just, you want to get a little attitude adjustment, and you're complaining about this, that, and the other, and you just think, what if this was the last time that I ever, and then, you just fill in the blank. And you can very quickly start to have a real sense of gratitude and appreciation for a lot of things in your life. What if this was the last time I ever kissed my wife? And she's been frustrating you, and maybe you're not getting along so well, but you start thinking that way, and you think, oh man, I wouldn't want to live my life without her. When is the last, what if this was the last time? What if this was the last time? What if this is the last time I got my paycheck? Might make you think a little bit about going to work and what you're doing. What if this was the last time? And you just fill in whatever that might be, and you can go on and on and on with. That exercise. You can get into your health. You can get into your kids if you have children. You can get into lots and lots and lots of things. Finances. It will run the gamut. It's a good one. Another technique is just, I've talked about this before, but I just don't think you can beat it. The gratitude journal. In other words, at the end of the day, you write down what you're grateful for. What happened in the day that was positive? I challenge people to find three things that you're grateful for. Now, you do something like that for, say, 3 weeks. 3 things each night you're grateful for 3 weeks. And see what that does to your attitude of gratitude. It will be amazing what it does. Another technique is the gratitude jar, or whatever you want to use. We were in Lake Como one time, and we were at this store, and they had this tin of cookies, and it said Virginia in English on the outside in this Italian place, and we were like, oh, that's wild. Like, we just bought them. Cookies are good, but we're like, we should keep this jar because it's kind of cool. It's like a memento from a beautiful time we had. And then it says Virginia, which is the state in which we live. Then we were in Switzerland, and we got this, we were at the Lindt chocolate factory. If you want to go through a factory tour, that's the tour you want to go through, because that's like free chocolate. And then, of course, at the end, they got their store, and they had this can, and it had like some, like the bridge in Luzerne, for instance, and just some of the famous scenes in Switzerland. Are like, oh, it's kind of a cool thing, and things like that. Of course, it could just be anything you want it to be, but the idea is that when things happen, you write them down, things that you're grateful for. You write them down. You sign on like a little slip of paper, like you have a little notepad thing near the jar. You jot it down. It doesn't have to be some big thing. And then you put it in the jar. And that's it. You just go throughout the whole year doing that. And then you get to New Year's Eve. And New Year's Eve, you open it up and you start reading all these things. Things you've forgotten all about. And what happens is it fills you with a profound sense of gratitude for that year. Now, you may think it was a good year. Maybe you thought it was a bad year. I tell you what, whatever you thought it was, when you get done with that gratitude jar, you're going to be like, wow, I got a lot to be thankful for. We got a lot to be thankful for. So these are some, really marvelous techniques. Another one is to go around the table at dinner time. And, of course, this requires the family to actually have dinner together, which I'm an enormous believer in. I mean, I was just talking with someone the other day, completely different subject, but just about for years, I would just be working all day, and then I would have many evening meetings at the church, and I'd come home at 6, and then I'd have like 45 minutes, and then I have to be back out the door for a 7 o'clock meeting. And so we made sure we always had family dinner together, and that was my chance to see the kids and visit with my wife some, and so it's just great time to get everybody together, and just instead of like this one time a year on Thanksgiving, just like go around the dinner table and be like, what are you grateful for? Like what happened good today? And you may say, I don't even know what I would do. Well, let me just help you with that a little bit then. Like looking for the small things to be grateful for instead of trying to make this like a highlight reel. So, small stuff, I mean, it can be something like a string of green lights on your way to work, like something like that. Like we have this famous street in Richmond called Broad Street. It's long, goes through the city and goes all the way out to the suburbs where I live. And one time I was driving on that street. I'm not kidding you. I mean, it must have been 15 or 20 lights, and I hit like every single one. It was like unbelievable. But just something like that just, makes your life easier. Got a parking spot at the front, you're like time challenged. It could just be something simple like that. You could go in, and I can remember one time going to this place, and they have these like Nashville hot chicken tacos, which I love, and other kinds. And that day, all tacos were $3 off. Like, all right, good. It could be something, just like, man, it was just such a nice day today, and the sun was shining, and took a little walk at lunch or after he got home, after dinner, or whatever the case may be, doesn't have to be big stuff. Of course, it can be big stuff. You got a new contract or got a really good compliment or praise. But if you look for it, there's all kinds of things to be thankful for, and they don't all have to be big and shiny. If we look for the blessings, we can find them. And sometimes you have to, generate it in the sense of you've got to say, I'm going to. And you have to do it with consistency. It's like a habit that you build, a gratitude habit. Appreciating, focusing on, and being thankful. That's what it looks like. Appreciating, focusing on, and being thankful for what we have and for the blessings that we have. And even in the toughest times when you don't feel blessed and things aren't going your way, there are still all kinds of things that you can be grateful for. Now, I'm not going to lie and say there aren't more. If you're flying high and all we do is win, sure. I would also certainly want to point out the gratitude to God. It's always important to just give God his due, to be able to say thanks to God. And we're taught this in the Bible. The Bible in Philippians, for instance, we'll talk about prayer and petition, and then the next words out after that's in chapter 4 in Philippians. By prayer and petition, which are two words that both mean prayer, but two different kinds of prayer. So by prayer and more prayer, with thanksgiving, make your request known to God. And the peace of God that passes understanding will guard your heart and mind in Christ Jesus. Like if you don't have peace, if you're anxious, the answer to that is prayer, requesting of God with thanksgiving. Then the Lord's Prayer, right? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Hallowing God, to hallow God, is to ascribe worth and honor to God, to give praise to God, and to be thankful to God. That's what it means. That is what it's all about. So this idea that we begin with thanking God is a very strong idea. Earlier in Philippians, in the first chapter, Paul says, every time I think of you, I thank my God. Whenever I mention you in my prayers, it makes me happy. So we just thank God for the people in our lives. Gratitude to God should be the first thing we express each day. What's been done for us is God's blessing in our lives. That's the foundation. What God continues to do. What God has done and what he continues to do. You can reflect on what he has done. That ought to cause gratitude. And then continuing. And you might want to just list out some 5 examples of God's goodness in your life. Just say, what are some of the things that, if you're just looking for ways to build this attitude of gratitude. I did this one time, and I met my wife when I was young. We met when we were in high school. It's just a blessing to meet someone that early in your life and end up getting married and then be with them this whole time. I wrote down that my 2 sons were athletes. Now, let me just say, I would have loved them just as much if they weren't. Wouldn't matter at all. I'm just saying because they were and they played the same sport and sports that I played and focused on the one that I focused on, and they played the same position that I played, it just made my life fun. It just made it more enjoyable to watch them go through their careers in high school and college. So just would have been happy whatever happened with them, but obviously that was great. My parents were just very supportive of my dreams and my lofty goals, and just thankful to have parents that were supportive. And certainly thankful to God for God choosing me to be a leader and to be able to giving me these gifts to be able to communicate. It's just thankful for some incredible educational opportunities that really kind of amazing story of how all that happened. It's really an amazing story that God just directed my life and allowed me to discover some things I didn't even really know that led me to Boston College. And then I applied and got accepted to Princeton. That was so exciting. And then I ended up in Cambridge, and I'm like, oh, which am I going to do? And then I ended up doing neither. We ended up having a baby instead and thought that was kind of over. And then a number of years, not that many years later, but a few years later, guy comes over our house for dinner. It's just an incredibly long story, and ends up telling me about a program just like the one I was going to go into at Princeton at Duke. And I was able to get into that program, which, by the way, they had to literally convene a special admissions meeting for me because I applied late. It's just, instead of waiting a whole other year, these are things you can just thank God for, how he so obviously, miraculously supplies, and you've got those things in your life. You can change the name, you can change the specifics, but we all have them, and it's just something that we've got to develop this. And you go through these kind of exercises, and what happens is you just begin to develop more and more gratitude, and then gratitude for other people. We need to make sure that people in our lives know we appreciate them. You'll never go wrong. You'll never go wrong appreciating people, thanking people. I practiced the thank you note cards for years. I'd run out of them, and my assistant would buy me another stack of them. You're just never going to go wrong thanking people. President Bush, the elder President Bush, was famous for his writing notes to people. You hear the guy, he was the CIA director. He was the representative ambassador to the United Nations for America. He was vice president, he was president. Guy had incredible leadership responsibilities, and yet he found time to do these things. You can show gratitude in a variety of ways, not just cards or words. There's other ways too. But needs to be consistent. It just can't be once a year or once in a while. And here again, just like listing out 5 examples of God's goodness, maybe, like 5 people that you're thankful for. 5 people that you're thankful for, and maybe you need to express to them that you're thankful for them because you haven't recently, and you need to, because they need to hear it. And that's the thing that's so amazing about it, is you just never know, when someone could be really down or even questioning, like, are they really making a difference or whatever the case. We used to have these communication cards every Sunday, and I got this one, and it said, just want to thank you for the years of sacrifice, service, prayers, love. It's been an honor to see God work in full 3D in so many homes and so many lives, and including my own, just like, well done, good and faithful servant. Wow. Just for whatever reason, that person chose that Sunday to do that. And those are the kind of things you keep. Obviously, I did. And then, you can reflect on them. I used to have this whole file filled with all these notes of appreciation. You want a little pick-me-up. So wouldn't you like to be on the other side of that? Like one of your notes is in that file or something, or just words that you spoke of encouragement, whatever it might be. You're never going to go wrong showing gratitude, being thankful, having an attitude of gratitude. It's the way to live your life. It is a guaranteed way to be less stressed and be more blessed. It's a guaranteed way to not complain and instead really be happy. So practice the attitude of gratitude. Practice being thankful. And if you'll do that, it'll have a huge, huge positive impact in your life. Have a great week.
You've been listening to the Point of Impact podcast with Rick McDaniel. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to you joining us for our next episode.